Vicky, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make two different types of cape veil. These are both the kind that you clip onto your dress. The first one I'm going to show you is this one, which is just a straight strip of embellished satin with the tulle, and this you can either clip onto straps of a dress up sort of on the shoulders where I've got it on the dress form here, or you can clip it lower onto the back of a strapless dress as well. And then this second one that I'm going to show you attaches onto straps of a dress, sort of up on the shoulders. And this one's got a little drape in the tulle between the two straps. To make both this style of veil, you'll need tulle. I'm using 108-inch wide, which is the extra wide tulle in silk white. You'll need some satin or another fabric to attach the tulle to. And you'll need a way to attach it to your dress. So I find either these little hair clips, like they're the really short little barrette clips, or shoe clips work really well. You'll need your sewing supplies like scissors and needle and thread, and then you'll need anything that you want to embellish it with. So I'm going to use some lace and some sequin lace that I've got left over from other projects. Measure the distance between the straps on the dress that you want to attach it to. So I've done mine to be 12 inches apart, so I've cut a piece of satin that's 1 inch longer, so I've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance at each end, and I've cut it so it's 3 inches wide. Next, measure from where the veil's going to start on your back down to the length you want it to be. Then that's how much tulle you'll need to either buy or cut from your bolt if you have a bolt of tulle. So I want mine to be 70 inches long, so I'm going to measure and cut a 70-inch piece from my bolt here. I'm just going to allow a little bit extra for the seam allowance at the top where we're going to attach it to the satin. Next, you want to take the width of your tulle and gather it right sides together onto your piece of satin, stopping 1/2 inch before each end. So I gather by hand, but you can do yours on the machine or with a gathering foot if you find that easier. Once the full 108-inch width of your tulle is gathered onto your satin, just even out the gathers. Next, I'm going to machine stitch this into place, and I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch from the edge. Now that's stitched, I'm just going to press it so the seam allowance comes up, so that's how it's going to look from the front. And I'm also just going to press a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the opposite side. This is how it looks when it's pressed. That's the wrong side, and that's how it looks on the right side. So next I've turned it right sides up, and I'm going to fold it right sides together so that those pressed parts meet on both ends. And now I'm just going to stitch my 1/2 inch seam allowance along each end. Now they're stitched, I'm just going to clip each end quite close to my stitching. And then I can turn that in the right way, just pushing those corners out. And then I'm going to pin that pressed edge along the edge with the sewn tulle. Then you need to either hand stitch or machine stitch this into place. I'm going to hand stitch it because I find it's neater than having the stitching showing on the outside. So this is the veil attached to the satin band, and the next job is to embellish it. So I've got this corded lace and I've got some sequin lace as well, but you can embellish it with whatever you want. You can use beads or crystals or embroidery patches. Old jewellery works really well too, so just let your imagination go wild. Or you can use offcuts if you've had alterations done from your dress and you've got offcuts of the fabric from that. You can use that to make this so that it matches. So to embellish mine, I'm just going to start cutting out some of the lace and pinning it where I want it along here. So I'm just cutting up that piece of lace to make the shapes that I want. and pinning it all the way along the satin band. I'm trying to sort of do it so it looks sort of balanced but not symmetrical. So I'm happy with that first layer of lace. So next I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the offcuts of this sequin lace that I've got and layer that over the top. I'm happy with the placement of both of the laces now, so next I'm just going to use an ivory thread to hand stitch it all into place. I'm only stitching to the bottom of the satin. I'm going to leave all of the bits of lace hanging down over the tulle loose. So this is my lace completely sewn on now. I'm really happy with how that's looking. So next I'm going to turn it over and it's time to add the clips to the back. When you're thinking about how to attach your clips, you need to think about how it's going to attach to your dress. So if it's going to attach onto straps, sew these on that way and then they can attach around the straps of your dress. If you're going to attach it to the back of a strapless dress, you need to do it so it can slide underneath and snap down over the top of the dress. And that's what I'm going to do for this one. I'm going to put it on the back of a strapless dress. So I'm going to sew a shoe clip at either end. Whenever I use shoe clips or anything, I always use the brand called Bluette, which are made in France. I find cheap shoe clips can come apart really easily at this hinge here, whereas the Bluette are really strong. They're more expensive, but they're worth the extra money. I'm just going to do exactly the same at the other end. The last thing I'm going to do, which is completely optional, is just to round off my corners at the bottom of the veil. You can leave it square if you want to. I just want to cut the corners just so they're curved. So I've just folded it in half, and these are the corners at the bottom of the veil, and I'm just going to trim them into a curve. Again, whether you cut this at all and how much of a curve you cut is completely up to you. And that's this veil completely finished. For the second style of clip-on cape veil, I've just found these two necklaces which I've decided I want to put onto the shoulders of it. So for this one you need to measure the length that you want, and I'm going to do 70 inches again, but then you also need to measure the amount you want it to drape between the shoulders. So I think I'm going to do mine around 22 inches. So my length will be 70 inches and my drape between the two shoulder pieces is going to be 22 inches. For the shoulder pieces for this veil, I've cut 2 pieces of satin. Each one is 4 inches wide and 5 inches deep, which is, when they're made up, is going to make a piece that is 2 inches down and 3 inches across. Okay, I've cut my 70-inch piece of tulle. Next, I'm going to find the centre and mark it with a pin, and then I'm going to measure 11 inches either side and mark that as well, and this will be the centre part that forms the drape at the top. Next you need to gather all of the fabric on the outside of the pin, so between the pin and the outside edge of the tulle, with right sides together onto each piece of satin. So that will go like that. Then we're going to gather all of that part onto here. So like that, and I'm going to leave my 1/2 inch seam allowance at each end, so I'm going to gather everything between that. Again, I'm doing my gathering by hand, but if you want to use your machine or a gathering foot, you can do that. Next, I'm going to do exactly the same at the other end. So that's both ends gathered onto the satin now, and this middle part that's left ungathered is the bit that will form the drape once it's on. Next, I'm going to stitch my gathering into place using a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both of these. This is how they look stitched on. So as I did for the first one, I'm going to press that end up, and I'm going to press a 1/2 inch seam allowance at this end on both sides. Now they're pressed, I'm going to do the same as the other one and bring them right sides together and lining up those folds. I'm just making sure the part of the drape is coming out the bottom so it doesn't get caught in the seam. Next, I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch seam allowance along all 4 of these edges. Next, I'm going to trim them and turn them right sides out. Now I'm just going to hand stitch these in place again. So this is the cape veil all together. That's our drape there in between these 2 bits of satin. So next is time to start decorating it. So I'm going to use those 2 necklaces, but I'm also going to put some lace underneath to hide the satin. So like on the other one, I'm going to cut some lace from this piece that I've got here and then just hand stitch it onto the satin. So that's the lace stitched onto both pieces of satin. Next, I'm going to add these little hair clips on the back so it could be attached onto straps. And because of the weight of the necklace, I'm actually going to put 2 on each side. And I'm also going to stitch these on before I do stitch the necklaces on, because I think it would be easier to sew them first and then the necklace afterwards. So I'm going to stitch 2 of these on each side on the inside of the satin. My clips are all sewn on, so the last job to do is to stitch the necklaces on top of the lace. I've taken the chain off each necklace. It was just held on with a ring, so I just opened that with my little jewellery pliers. So next I'm going to decide how I want them, and I think I definitely want that part hanging down there. And I think we can probably bring these bits down, oh yes, like that. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. If you're looking for necklaces of your own to use for something like this, find ones that are really articulated, so lots of little pieces that are held together with jump rings that you can move and manipulate nicely. Some necklaces are quite solid and they'll stay in that necklace shape, but you want ones that are going to move and flex nicely so you can make them into the shape that you want to sew on. So I'm really happy with how that looks, so I'm going to go ahead and sew those into place. These are my 2 finished halves with all the jewels sewn on. So that's the fronts and the backs. And the last job I did was just to curve the bottom corner as I did for the other veil. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you can take the techniques that I've shown you here and just use them to create something of your own. Honestly, the embellishment opportunities on these are endless. Not only for the embellishments at the top here and here, but you can also embellish the tulle. So you can add sequins or ribbons or lace around the edge of the tulle. You can add crystals and sequins throughout the length of the tulle as well. The 2 I've made here are very bridals because I've picked the ivory tulle and the ivory lace and the sparkle. But you could also use black lace or black tulle or coloured tulle and use these as a way to dress up a dress for a ball or a formal. So again, the possibilities are endless. You don't have to use tulle, you could use a chiffon or an organza for a different look as well. If you enjoyed my video, please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think of these, and click the little thumbs up. It all helps me to get my little channel seen a bit more on YouTube. So I make all sorts of sewing videos and tutorials. I make tutorials for accessories as well, and I show you what goes on behind the scenes in my life and in my fashion business in my weekly vlogs. See you soon.